The rain fell in sheets that night, turning the city streets into mirrors of gray light and rushing water. Most people had long disappeared into the warmth of their homes, into the soft glow of dinner tables and the sound of laughter behind closed doors. But not her. She sat on the cold, wet steps of an abandoned building, her thin jacket pulled open just enough to shield her infant from the worst of the downpour, feeding her baby the only way a mother knows how, with everything she had left. Her hair was soaked. Her shoes were torn. Her eyes carried the kind of exhaustion that sleep alone cannot cure. And yet, she never once looked away from her child's face. Because that tiny face was the only reason she was still breathing. If you believe that one act of kindness can change a life forever, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to our channel, and drop a comment below. You being here means the world to us. Her name was Zara, 24 years old, though she looked both younger and older at the same time. Younger in the softness of her face, older in the weight behind her eyes. Just 6 months ago, her life had looked completely different. She had a small but warm apartment in the edge of the city, a job at a textile factory, and a husband she believed in with her whole heart. When her daughter, Mira, was born, she thought she had finally arrived somewhere safe. She had named her Mira because the word meant light, and that is exactly what the baby felt like, a small flame in the middle of all the uncertainty. But life, as it sometimes does, dismantled everything without warning. Her husband disappeared 3 months after Mira's birth, leaving behind nothing but unpaid rent and a note that said he wasn't ready. The factory where she worked closed down weeks later. Her landlord gave her 10 days. Her family was far away, her mother elderly and unwell in a village 200 kilometers away, her brothers barely surviving themselves. She called every number she knew. She knocked on every door that might open. But the city, as large and bright as it looked from the outside, had very little room for a young woman with an infant and no money. She spent her first night on the street in a state of shock, holding Mira against her chest as though someone might try to take her. By the third night, she had learned where the warmest vents were, which shop owners left bread outside at closing time, and which streets were dangerous after midnight. She did what she had to do. She survived the way women who have been left with nothing always survive, quietly, fiercely, and without making too much noise about it. The night that changed everything was a Tuesday in November. The temperature had dropped sharply after days of mild weather, and the rain came suddenly, the kind of cold rain that soaks through every layer and makes the bones ache. Zara had found a shallow overhang near the entrance of an old building on the business side of the city, the kind of street lined with glass towers and revolving doors and men in expensive coats who moved quickly and looked at nothing. She sat with her knees pulled up, Mira pressed against her, trying to feed her daughter with shaking hands while the rain blew sideways under the overhang and soaked through what little dry cloth remained. Elias Khan was not the kind of man who stopped. He was 41, the CEO of one of the largest logistics companies in the country, and he had not built that empire by pausing in the middle of the rain to notice things on sidewalks. He had a reputation for being brilliant and unreachable in equal measure, the kind of man his employees described as precise, demanding, and emotionally unavailable. He had lost his own mother young, and had decided somewhere in those early years of grief that softness was a liability. He had spent the next 2 decades proving it to himself and to everyone around him. His world was numbers, projections, decisions, and exits. He did not linger. He did not look back. But something made him stop that night. Later, he would not be able to explain it properly. He had just come out of a late meeting, irritated about a failed merger, his mind already running through tomorrow's schedule, when he turned the corner and saw her. Not the poverty first, he had passed poverty before without slowing. What stopped him was the angle of her body. The way she had curved herself entirely around her child, the way every inch of her posture said I will take all of this so she doesn't have to feel any of it. There was something in that image that reached past all his walls and struck something old and buried inside him. He stood in the rain for a moment without moving. She did not look up. She was focused entirely on Mira, murmuring something soft, something that wasn't quite a song and wasn't quite a prayer but existed somewhere in between. Elias took a step closer and only then did she notice him. She looked up, and he saw her face clearly for the first time. Not ashamed, not begging, just exhausted and fiercely, quietly dignified. That expression undid him more than anything else. He asked if she needed help in a voice that came out awkward because he was so unused to asking that question. She didn't answer right away. She had learned in these weeks that questions from strangers on dark streets rarely led anywhere good. But something in his stillness told her this was different, and she was too tired to run even if she wanted to. She told him she just needed the rain to stop for a while. He looked up at the sky, then back at her, and told her he thought he could do better than that. He called his driver. He stood in the rain beside her, not hovering, not pressuring, just standing there like a wall between her and the worst of the wind, until the car arrived. He asked his assistant to find the nearest women's shelter with availability. When she told him there was a wait of several days, he made a second call and booked a hotel room instead, the kind of decision he usually applied only to visiting executives and board members. He did not think about it as charity. He did not think about it as anything yet. He was acting on some instinct that had bypassed his usual calculations entirely. At the hotel, he arranged for food and warm clothing through the concierge without making her feel like a project or a problem to be solved. He left an envelope with enough money to cover 2 weeks, along with a card from a social welfare organization he had quietly funded for years but never spoken about publicly. He wrote a single line on a piece of hotel stationery, "You don't have to do this alone," and left it with the envelope. Then he went home. Zara sat in that warm room for a long time without moving, Mira asleep on the bed beside her, and let herself cry for the first time in weeks. Not from sadness exactly, though sadness was there. She cried because she had been holding herself so tightly together for so long that kindness, real and unexpected kindness, cracked her open in a way that nothing else could. She cried because someone had seen her, not the circumstances, not the tragedy of her situation, but her, a mother doing everything she could, worthy of shelter and warmth, and a note that said she didn't have to carry it alone. The social welfare organization helped her find transitional housing within the week. The staff there connected her with a job training program for women re-entering the workforce. She studied in the evenings while Mira slept, worked harder than she had ever worked, and within 4 months had secured a position as an administrative coordinator at a small firm. It was not glamorous. It was not easy. But it was hers, and it was stable, and she built on it with the same fierce quiet that had kept her alive on those cold streets. Elias heard about her progress through the organization's coordinator, who mentioned it as a success story during a quarterly review meeting. He didn't say anything in the meeting. But afterward, alone in his office, he sat for a long time looking out at the city and thought about the version of himself that had almost walked past her. He thought about his mother, whom he had lost before he could do anything to help her. He thought about how many Zaras existed in this city on any given night, curved around their children in the rain, too proud to collapse, too human to be invisible. He quietly doubled his annual donation to the organization and said nothing about it to anyone. They did not have a dramatic reunion. Life is not always tidy in that way. But they existed after that night as people who had changed each other, she by surviving, he by finally stopping. The city kept moving around them both, loud and indifferent as cities always are. But somewhere in the fabric of it, a cold man had allowed himself to feel something, and a woman who had lost everything had found her way back to solid ground, and neither of them would ever be quite the same. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that people are worth stopping for, please like this video right now, share it with someone who needs to hear this today, and leave a comment below. Your support keeps these stories alive and reaching the hearts that need them most. And before we close, drop a comment telling us, has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life, or have you been the stranger who stopped? We want to hear your story. Because in the end, that is all any of us are, strangers who can choose, in one quiet moment, to stop.